Good morning and welcome to Sunrise Daily again. I'm Ayo Makinde.
Good morning. I am Bukola Samuel Wemimo. It's a beautiful morning today. Morning good for a cup of coffee, which is the tradition on Sunrise Daily.
Or tea.
Or tea, as the case may be.
Or cocoa.
Or cocoa.
Or whatever else. Well, so grab yours before you drive out. And if you're already in traffic, just make sure you're not the one driving. But let's begin this morning by taking you through the papers. And joining us this morning, of course, when we sit this way, you know we have someone to go through the papers with us. Dr. B.C. Dejifolutile is a former editor of Punch newspaper and editor-in-chief, Frank Talk Now. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
Well, some frank talk is necessary, I guess.
Definitely.
Okay, let's begin with the Daily Trust newspaper this morning. And it would seem like a good number of people are confused about one thing or the other. It's the season of politics, no doubt about it. So that will definitely be the issue that everyone is talking about. The Daily Trust newspaper is our first pick, and it talks about confusion as Jonathan rejects APC presidential forms. And then there are a number of riders. This one is in parentheses. Joined ruling party in 2021. Northern governor paid for forms. Miyetti Allah denies involvement. Ex-president did not authorize purchase. Spokesman. Silva Ayade Lawan picked forms. Court declines Emefiele's request. Summons inec AGF. All these stories are on pages 5 and 11, but I don't know. Clearly, there are quite a number of things to talk about.
Well, it's interesting. It's interesting, really. And it's an interesting time for us in Nigeria. And it's like a comedy show. We just get to hear so many different things every day. Sometimes you just wonder, is this real? Like yesterday when I heard the news of ex-president Jonathan purchasing, or some groups getting forms for him, I was scandalized. And I was really afraid. I was shaking, and I was like, no, what are we talking about? Where are we really?
We're in Nigeria. Just in
Nigeria. I needed somebody to actually pinch me to remove. So it's really interesting. And sometimes you wonder what politicians take us for in this country. Because if, in the case of the ex-president, if all the campaign was about his cluelessness, about his not being able to handle Nigeria well, and the electorate actually went for a change, and you now see that person being the one that you are talking about to come back again, you just wonder that what are we looking for? What are we talking about? Are we really serious about progress and change?
Well,
but I'm happy he has said that he didn't authorize any group to buy any form for him, and that is an insult. But then, interestingly, almost immediately, the Miyetti group came up to say, no, we didn't buy the form. But we saw a picture. We actually saw the picture of the people that bought the form. They took a picture, and they look like the Miyetti people. They dress like them. So you now wonder, what is going on in this country?
Well, the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper also has pictures with, what's it called? Bank letter or whatever it is.
Exactly.
And a receipt. Well,
yes.
The details you'll find on pages 5 and 11 of the Daily Trust newspaper this morning. But there's an angle. As an editor speak to this, the word rejects in the headline is put in some kind of commas.
Yes.
What does that mean?
Well, because nobody is really sure.
Okay.
Nobody is really sure. For example, I think a few days...
But his spokesman put out a statement.
Yes, but Jonathan himself, a few days back, when some people went to his house in Abuja to beg him to come back and rescue Nigeria, told them that he cannot tell them for sure that he's not going to come back, but that they should wait for his decision.
Okay. I guess we also have to wait.
But then again, when you consider that nothing is impossible in politics in Nigeria,
exactly.
and 24 hours can make all the difference.
Yes, exactly.
Let's now, against that backdrop, let's now look at News Direct. I'm going to start this time from the bottom part of News Direct, which says, APC makes U-turn on zoning over fear of losing to PDP. What's the objective, the unseen objective here in your own analysis?
Well, for that zoning, I think it's not as if APC as a party could have a template for zoning, but the participants were not really committed to zoning. That's my thoughts. Also, I think making a U-turn is also key. If you look at Nigerian politics, it is believed that votes come from certain parts of the country, and the interest of that part should be taken into consideration whenever you are looking for another president. You get it? And probably they are also thinking that PDP, and if you actually watch the two parties, they are watching themselves. You could see that one's move will determine the other's move. Mm-hmm. So it's not surprising, even if
like
APC,
40 million gave birth to 100 million.
Exactly. So if you really look at the way that everybody is looking at clinching that position of presidency, then zoning may not really matter to APC. What may matter to the party could be how to be there based on what they perceive to be the bloc that supplies the highest number of votes in Nigeria. Whether that perception is true or not is another thing. But you can see that they will work towards that. And if you listen to the Secretary of Harewa Forum, the Northern Elements Forum, Ahmed, you could see that he was saying something about, I think it appeared on your channel also, he was saying something about Nigerians allowing that Nigerians should not intimidate, harass, or force the North to surrender to any zoning approach. That if election and democracy is about number, that the North has the number, and that if democracy is about voting for who you want to vote for, then the North should be allowed to vote for whoever they want to vote for. And if the person that the North chooses to vote for happens to be a Northerner, so be it. Because democracy is a game of number. So if you hear people talk like that, you can imagine what will be going on in the minds of these people.
Decision makers.
Yes,
within the party.
and that could determine whatever happens about zoning or any other thing that has been earlier put in place to ensure that power moves around in the party.
Interestingly, that didn't actually come from a political party as yet.
Yes,
so let's just
wait for an official confirmation from the national chairman of the party.
Yeah.
Well, the New Telegraph this morning is, before that, let me go to the Guardian newspaper. Seems to be speaking the same thing around the same issues that we're raising. Let's go to the Guardian newspaper. The Guardian newspaper, and this is what you have on the front page of the Guardian newspaper. 2023 presidency, especially since we are talking about the elections. INEC to sever CBN ties as Emefiele seeks court's nod. That's been making the news, but here are the writers, perhaps for some insight. Court invites INEC AGF before hearing Emefiele's restraining order on presidential ambition. INEC, Emefiele's ambition will have implications for sensitive election materials storage at CBN. Why CBN governor is not qualified to run, Falana Amadi Adegborua, Emefiele suits a comedy insults to Nigerians. HCSF memo puts CBN chief in quandary. Now, even I am in quandary.
You know, it's a real comedy. Indeed, it's a comedy. Initially, I didn't believe that the CBN governor actually wanted to, just like ex-President Jonathan has come out to tell us that he didn't send anybody. I was thinking that he probably didn't send anybody. When I saw the APC vehicles, sometimes back, like 2 or 3 months back, and campaign vehicles, I just thought, oh, somebody, an enemy must have done this. You see? But when I read, when they got the form for him, and I read his reaction that he will buy the form by himself, and that he has, having spent 35 years working, that he could afford to raise the 100 million naira to buy the form, and that he sang the rice millers and all of that. But that he will make his decision known. It's God who will lead him, and he will make his decision known. So I knew that there is likely, that God is likely to actually ask him to
and perhaps God has confirmed the decision through the court.
Yes, I guess when God told him, he now realized that, oh, because remember that Governor Keredolu had written a letter that he must resign if he must go for that position. And I probably thought he felt he should take the legal route. That was why he went to court to seek legal permission or action to be able to do what he's doing. But I don't think it is right for a CBN governor to show interest in a presidential ticket when he's still in office. Everything about it looks wrong to me and to many people, I suppose.
Maybe we'll wait for the courts to decide that.
Well,
because I mean,
because even electoral act. The electoral act does not even permit him to do that.
Well,
even the one that is in existence now, because he has a political appointee, which they are still struggling to get that clause out of the act.
So don't forget that
the courts are contending that,
yes,
and their arguments look convincing. But it seems that politicking has, pushed some real issues to the rear. This is why I'm, moving to the Vanguard, and the front page of the Vanguard says Methodist Church parents, students kick against Asuu's continued strike. Asuu is saying that it's dissatisfied with the efforts of federal government to resolve this matter. Do you agree with Asuu? There are efforts in the first place. Why don't we look critically at these efforts, first of all, before we dismiss them?
That Asuu federal government impasse is, I think we are just not serious about education in this country. And if you know some things about lecturers' salaries and what they earn, you feel sorry. I just did an investigation and reported the story about lecturers' pay in Nigeria. And I discovered that even as a PhD holder in Nigeria of today, your salary is 150,000 naira. Who gets that and feel happy? Who gets that and feel happy? A professor of 25 years experience does not even earn up to 500,000 naira. Who gets that and feel happy? And you expect to have an education that will compete globally? It doesn't work like that. However, as it is, I do not think also that the federal government has enough money to satisfy Asuu's demand, because there is a backlog of money that ought to have been paid to the union if you go back to their 2009 agreements, which means that both parties should be serious-minded about moving the education forward. For me, I cannot say I've seen enough commitment on the part of the government. I can't really say so, that I've seen enough commitment. And like people will say that for many politicians and public officers, their children do school here, so they don't really feel the heat. And somebody said, who cooks a stew that your own family does not eat out of? If our government officials, politicians, leaders think they are committed to Nigeria's education, that they are doing their best about moving the sector forward, then they should have allowed their own children to also enjoy what other people are enjoying.
It's arguable, yeah, because there are those of them who would say, look, our children are here as well. There are those of them who would say we can afford to send our children abroad. And I do understand the argument here, because indeed, if it's as biting as you want people to believe, I mean, you would do something about it. Exactly. Which is why, I mean, going to the front page of the New Telegraph, finally, Asu's 3-month strike extension. Nans threatens to scuttle party primaries, blockage, NAS, what is that? Whatever that means, you'll find the details on page 5, 8, and 30.
Must be a typo.
Well, look at the riders. Says FG has declared war on varsity students to occupy federal roads beginning today. May shut down from May 14. Puts state chapters on alert. Calls on NLC, TUC, CSO support. Varsities to get 642 million naira, police 396 million naira, colleges of education 447 million naira each. That's according to TED Fund. Asuu to embark on strike over government's inability to implement 2021 pact.
Wow. I mean, that's it's all a picture of crisis in the sector. And for the Nans, I think when we were in university, Nans used to be very
very potent.
Yes, forceful, and the government, even ex-president Olusegun Obasanjo feared students' union. But these days, the students, it's like nobody even respects their opinion. So they need to do something about their destiny. If they really want to occupy, provided they are not violent, provided it's a peaceful protest.
Which is what any government would fear.
Exactly.
I mean, you referenced the former president, who was General Obasanjo at the time.
Yes.
The Ali must go crisis. I didn't want to use the word riots. Was not peaceful. Yeah. And it was something that students, were part of, So it's something that is scary enough just thinking about it. And it's a question we also put to NAS. But speaking to the function that then the members of NANS are the ones who are directly affected. One of the statements accredited to NANS recently says, look, eventually federal government will agree with Asuu. Asuu will get paid. We would have lost time that cannot be redeemed.
Yes.
So do you think that perspective of students is being factored into this whole conversation either by government or by Asuu?
Apparently not really so. Because if it was in the first instance, we won't be here. Like the students rightly put it, yes, Asuu will go back to work. The federal government has already stopped paying their salary, but they will still pay that salary. And that time will have been wasted. So nobody really thinks about the students. Look at this particular scenario now. With this extension of 3 months, it's already 6 months. How many months do we have in a session? It's just 9 months. In 2020, they lost 9 months, a whole session. They've not recovered from that. I read on the internet about some people saying that they got admission maybe 4 years ago and they are still on the same level. So you can just imagine how people waste their time, because or how the system, institutions waste the time of students because of problems. And I say it, look, we need to do something about our education sector if we want to move forward. Nigeria cannot afford to run a free university education again. Which country does that? Even the countries where they do that, they are even introducing tuition gradually. And in those countries, the tax payment is very high. Look at the US. Do they offer their citizens free education? No. Or the UK? No. All they do is that they make loans available, they make grants available, they ensure that nobody that wants to go to school does not have the opportunity to go there on account of lack of fund. That is what a government should be doing. But in Nigeria, we want to compete with the world, yet we don't want to pay for university education. University education or higher education for that matter is not cheap.
Which brings to mind one of the Asuu's key demands, which is university autonomy. And if that is going to become a reality, the conversation, the negotiations, communication between the union and federal government must continue. But it appears that they're not talking right now.
They are not. They are not. Asuu said the federal government has not invited them, and they are not going to talk to they are not going to go and meet the federal government. That if they invite them, they will go. I think there is just lack of sincerity. People don't just know what is happening, because one time you will hear the federal government telling us that we just met with Asuu, we just this crisis will soon be resolved, and all of that. But at the end of the day, it's back and forth, back and forth. So
that's really sad. But let's look at another paper right now. This time we'll be going to the Tribune. Have we looked at the Tribune? No, not at all. The front page of the Tribune says, race for APC presidential ticket. Fulani group pays for Jonathan's forms. Emefiele confirms ambition. We've looked at that, but more interesting, let's look at the riders. Senate President Lawan Timi Silva join race. CBN governor wants court to make him remain in office and run for presidency. Applies for order of status quo antebellum against INEC AGF. Court turns down request summons defendants to appear before it. CBN Banking Acts forbid Emefiele from running. Falano. Adegborua mobilizes NBA civil societies to shut aspiration down. He must resign as CBN governor. Now, that's the Tribune, Nigerian Tribune. Now, the first rider gives us an insight into how expansive the presidential race is becoming. Now, if you look at the cost of the presidential nomination forms, more and more people can afford it. How it looks like we can't stop talking about the cost of these nomination forms.
Well, I think initially when that, let's put it this way, you know, that 100 million will be the salary of whoever emerges president for 4 years. Because the total emolument of Nigeria's president now is about 24 million naira per annum. So whoever brings 400 million to buy a form, he is paying the form, the money that is to earn for 4 years as president. And I don't know how workable that is. It is that ridiculous. Now, when they introduced that 100 million, what they told us was that it's to ensure that only serious-minded people will be able to drop that money and join the race. To them, that was the reason they gave for increasing the amount of money. But apparently, it has shown that while Nigerians may think that there is poverty in the land, that poverty is discriminatory in that it's just some people are experiencing it while others really have more than enough. Because the rate at which all this 100 million is coming now shows that there is really money in the land. But it brings up another question, that this money is probably localized among certain sets of people. I think the questions, Nigerians should be able to interrogate that. Why is it that we cry about poverty, cost of living rising and all of that in Nigeria, and at the same time a certain set of people keep on bringing out hundreds of millions of naira to buy a phone?
Maybe we should make it
A
another
minute
election.
percentage of the cumulative amount can pay Asuu, actually.
Exactly.
I mean,
exactly.
just calculate. Leadership newspaper this morning, let's look at that. And it's also, of course, talking politics. 2023 presidency. Jonathan's picture with APC chairman Adamu sparks membership controversy. Okay. As ex-president rejects APC nomination forms from Northern Group, Lawan Ayade Silva pick forms, Bakari declares, Kalu withdraws, backs Lawan. Number of APC presidential aspirants now 27. I can't help myself from multiplying 27 by 100 million. I struggled. But a lot has been said about that as well. I can see someone picking up a calculator to do this. Okay.
I mean,
But
somebody should try to be generous.
Honestly.
I can share my account number. Miyetti Allah questions spending of cattle ranch fund by states. You know, while all of the politicking and all of that is going on, we sometimes seem to or tend to lose sight of the issues. Now, Miyetti Allah questioning spending of cattle ranch fund by states is something that should actually give us, you know, some concern. Remember, I think it was in 2020 that or was it 2019, that conversations around the National Livestock Transformation Plan began to raise its head, and so much was said about that. Some called it Ruga and all of that, but the one from the Office of the Vice President is the National Livestock Transformation Plan. And a number of states were set to key in. That was also embedded into the Economic Sustainability Plan. You know, that NLTP was embedded into that one. So states were supposed to partner with the federal government for that NLTP to work. And this is perhaps the background to this Miyetti Allah questioning cattle ranch funding. Who should be asking these questions?
Actually, not just that aspect of funding. Any time there is a partnership between the federal government and states on projects in Nigeria, that is, if the state has to supply maybe a contributory fund before something can be done, usually many states usually don't comply. And I won't be surprised in this particular case, even though I am not really sure if the states at that time, if all the states actually agree to this funding for livestock.
A number of states signed up for it. At the time. But how far that has gone?
Because sometimes too, they just sign when there is crisis. It's like they just do whatever can bring down the crisis, and after, to get money becomes a problem. Let's look at this UBEC counterpart funding, for example. You know also that the federal government pays 500 million and states are supposed to pay 500 million each to that fund. But in a number of cases, many states don't pay that counterpart.
But if any commitment had been made in that regard, particularly since the farmer herder crisis became a big issue in the country, wouldn't it have been evident, you know, where states would have to have less of the burden of cattle's running, walking aimlessly, looking for feed in many states of the Federation?
It's just a product of our lack of commitment to agreements, to treaties, to things, and that is why we still see this, and partly why somebody, a union like Asuu is also on strike. You know, people just enter into agreements and they don't, our states and even government functionaries, in this case it is states, But in another case, it could even be the federal government itself. But we are not committed to agreements. Ordinarily, you should have expected that if you want peace, that you should be committed to whatever will bring about a lasting peace.
Okay. Well, it's a continuous conversation which we'll continue to keep our eyes on. Just to mention that on the front page of the same leadership newspaper, 500 billion naira demand. Prepare for worst. Fuel scarcity. Eichmann tells Nigerians. Please don't comment on that one because I can imagine what's coming out. Dr. B.C. Dejifolu today is former editor, Punch newspaper, and editor-in-chief, Frank Talk Now. Thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Coming.
Thank you.
And with that, we wrap up a look at the papers this morning. We're back right after now to take on the issues for the day. Please stay with us.
February 14, 2020 was a bad Valentine's Day for students in government-owned universities, as lecturers announced a 4-week warning strike, disrupting academic activities across the country. The 4-week strike was extended by 8 weeks, as contained in a statement by the Asuu leadership on March 14, 2022. The lecturers are protesting unpaid earned allowances, university revitalization funding, as well as the operationalization of the University Transparency and Accountability System, UTAS, which is a payments platform designed by the lecturers.
That will waste too much time.
At the resumption of negotiations with the government in March, the Asuu leadership told the federal government that they wanted action and not promises.
Nigerians want to see action. The students want to see action. My members want to see action. I also believe the general public want to see action.
Although the Labour Minister had assured the striking lecturers of the government's determination to end the strike, the universities remain shut almost 3 months after. All hopes of reopening the universities were again dashed, as Asuu extended the strike for another 12 weeks.
Let's welcome the Honorable Minister.
At this news conference on the National Productivity Day in Abuja, the Minister of Labour and Employment said the government had not given up on its reconciliation efforts.
The work is ongoing. Professor Nimibrig have given an interim report to the Ministry of Education. I requested for certain things to assist him do his work. From my understanding, the Ministry of Education is addressing the request from Professor Nimi Briggs.
Asuu embarked on one of its longest strikes in 2020, crippling academic activities for a whole session. Many fear a repeat in terms of the longevity of that industrial action and hope that the ongoing impasse will be resolved quickly to prevent a situation where students will again lose another academic year.
Is it a standoff? That's one of the questions to put to Professor Abiodun this morning, who is former president of the Academic Staff Union of Universities, Asuu, to help us understand what the issues are, especially now that there's been an extension. Thanks for joining us this morning, Prof. Well, there is, you've seen what the students are doing, and of course, all kinds of talk from the side of government, various officials of government saying one thing or the other and trying to put, and of course, Asuu also adding voice, but the students themselves are talking. What are your perspectives, first of all, about all that is happening? Maybe we'll begin by asking, has there been any overture from government to Asuu directly since the announcement made to extend the strike?
Thank you, Ayo, and good morning, Nigerians. We actually want to thank Channels. Let me thank Channels on behalf of our union, and particularly on behalf of the president of Asuu, for putting this conversation in perspective. You have actually kept tracking this crisis in the education sector, particularly in the university system. To answer your question directly, I would say no. The government has not made a direct overture, to the best of my knowledge, except they reached out to the president last night. But we all know this game of deception that has been going on, and I'm happy your reviewer this morning, the lady who did the newspaper review, actually helped us to prepare the foundation for this conversation. You see, the Nigerian politicians, they have been playing games. They have been playing games with us. They have been playing games with Nigerians. They have been playing games with Nigerian youths. And that is why you hear them today saying we are engaging them, we are talking. And when they say we are talking, what they actually mean is that we just want to keep them busy, pretending that we are solving the problem when there are no concrete deliverables. As far back as 2017, when we started this negotiation on the 4 key issues, funding, condition of service, investor autonomy and academic freedom, and other matters that relate to having qualitative university education in Nigeria. We were on that trajectory for 4 full years, and it was never ending. Now I heard that the Labour Minister was saying that the Mimi Briggs Committee has submitted some preliminary reports. What is in that report? It is empty. When you talk of collective bargaining, it is not about consulting individuals in the ministry. It's about government putting together a team, briefing the team, giving the team a clear mandate to arrive at a proposal that government will review, and if government has any objection to any part of the proposal, government will express it. We'll also take that same proposal to our members. If our members approve, then we bring back to the negotiating table and we sign. That is what we have been doing since 1992. That is the spirit of collective bargaining. But what our members saw in the new approach to this, because this is the longest negotiation we have had in our history. 5 years, more than 5 years now, they've kept us talking. And what they want to do is they want to dribble Nigerian scholars until they leave office. And our members have seen through them. And that is why they are insisting that until and unless we have concrete deliverables, we have a signed agreement, and implementation commences, they are not going to back down on this strike action. Of course, our comrade in the Ministry of Labour, he calls himself a comrade. The Minister of Labour, Dr. Senator Christine Gige, I think he has done his worst. He stopped our members' salaries, and we think that is ill-advised and, of course, counterproductive. But let's wait and see how far that takes them. That is where we are.
Prof, the big question most Nigerians are asking, which our newspaper reviewer this morning also asked, is where does the vehemence leave the students? You know, when the proverbial elephant fights, it's the grass that suffers. So If we look at federal government's commitment made last year in the payment of earned academic allowance and revitalization fund, would Asuu be willing to concede while government tries to look up ways to source funds to solve this problem?
Thank you very much. I think there is a misconception about the struggle of Asuu. The struggle of Asuu is a mission to rescue Nigeria. If you want to destroy a country, you will attack its education, because education is actually the foundation for any transformation whatsoever. If we are going to make progress with our security, we are going to make progress with our economy, we are going to make progress with our with corruption, we must go back to education. You see, when you say that it's about looking for money to address Asuu's demands, I think we are misunderstanding the issues. We're actually watering it down, watering the main issue down. We want to rescue Nigerian education because what the ruling class is doing in Nigeria is to systematically destroy the education sector. And if you want to destroy the foundation for development, you attack the intelligentsia. The ruling class in Nigeria has drawn a battle line with Nigerian intelligentsia, and they have seen them as their enemies. Whereas, when they talk about development partners, they should be looking into the universities. They should not be thinking of those with some technical school certificates that come to Nigeria because they are white-skinned and they are in suit. They see them as development partners. We have given this example before. We were at the presidency in 2013. There was a problem with the air conditioner. The person they brought in to fix it was a white person. Can you imagine? Something a graduate of our technical college to be able to fix. But we have destroyed the public primary, the public secondary. What the ruling class is attacking now is the public universities and public tertiary education in general. I think Nigerians should see this perspective that Asuu is bringing to the table. If each time they say there is problem with the Nigerian academics, people will just reduce it to paying salaries, addressing some aspect of revitalization. Whereas there is a big gamut which we have presented within our negotiated agreement document that government needs to look into and make a commitment. You see, when they say people quickly move to area of funding that government alone cannot fund education. We have not said that. We have not said government alone should fund education. We have come up with proposals on how to fund education. We have in our agreement. And when people say two elephants fight, it's not about two elephant fight. Our youth, our children, because we also have children among them. As I speak, my children are at home. The president's children are at home. My colleagues' children are at home. There are those who have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 children who are back home because of this action. But what we are saying is we need to salvage this country. This country is drifting. All of us are talking about drifting. You have just done in your review a critical analysis of what is going on in Nigeria. The Nigerian politicians are taking us for a ride. At what point do we put a stop to this drift? If they are doing it in economy and we are looking on, if they are doing it with corruption, we are looking on, if they are doing it with process of development, we are looking on. We cannot afford to do it with the universities.
Okay, well,
we are doing this for historical reasons, so that in the future, nobody will say when Nigeria was being destroyed.
But the issue, Prof, at the end of the day, the issue is around funding. And that's that's why anyone would say, okay, it's just money that Asuu wants. Perhaps that understanding needs to also be communicated effectively to people. For instance, one of the responses that the Federal Ministry of Education has put out through its Director of Press and Media Relations is that the money coming from TED Fund is also money coming from government. Do you think that is a fair argument?
TED Fund has been around at least since 2011. Has TED Fund made the desired impact? TED Fund was supposed to be a support or intervention agency. TED Fund is not expected to be the main source of funding of capital projects in Nigerian universities, for God's sake. But go to public universities now, federal and state. You only see TED Fund and niche assessment funds, driving the capital projects up to 90-something%. In fact, state universities are worst because they are regarded now as TED Fund universities. But they are not making the desired impact. Ayo, let me shock you. As you are aware, please go and look at the manifesto of the ruling party. They said they will give 15% to education in their manifesto each year. But since they came to power, budgetary allocation has been sliding. They made probably about 9%. They reduced to 8. It became 7. It became 6. The last one was 5.4. So is that how to say we are serious about education? And let's put all the cards on the table. When you look at the demographics, you find that there is no way we will commercialize education. We will not worsen the conditions of the Nigerian people. More students will drop out of school.
Just 1 second. We'll come to that. We'll come back to the commercialization because there are those who are arguing that, look, free education is not realistic because, Nigeria clearly cannot afford it, at least from what the federal government has been saying. But you talked about other sources of income, other sources of funding education. You have talked about needs avenues. You've talked about TED Fund, which is one of those avenues. They are all coming from government one way or another, aren't they?
No. You see, the ideas we are talking about were also our proposals. Whether you talk of TED Fund, we proposed it. That the private sector, which absorbs products from the universities, they should make inputs. And that was how we arrived at the 2% profit tax that we have in TED Fund. The needs assessment you are talking about, that arose from our original proposal to government. When we had the last agreement 2009, we estimated what we needed to fix the problems in our universities, the rot and decay. And we came to about 1.5. But government said they didn't believe what we were doing. And they set up a federal government needs assessment committee that went around over 70 universities in Nigeria, public universities, state and federal, and came back with damning reports. And government first scandalized, and they saw the need to arrive at a figure on what they need to do over a period of 6 years. And that was how they came to that 1.3 trillion. So what we have been having now are just what I would call snippets of what we have in that report. If government had been serious in implementing the report faithfully as expected of them, by now, we should have repositioned our universities back to what we had in the 70s and 60s. That was the trajectory we were going, and we were able to attract foreign students. We were able to charge foreign students. And Nigerian education, particularly university education, was competing globally. That is the way to go, and that is where we should be going. So when you say funds coming from government, we have said government should fix our universities so that our universities can do cutting-edge research. Then we can come up with innovation and inventions that could be patented. When you see some of these universities abroad, I visited Finland way back 2003. The headquarters of Nokia was at the University of Uvascula. And there was this triple helix going on there. I saw that one in action, not the story. Students from the Department of Engineering were doing their practicals in the industry. And so assignments that were given were resolved with practitioners there on the field. And so you could imagine what will be going back into the universities from the inventions and joint projects that they were doing. So universities were being funded through active participation in the industry, and the profits that came from those efforts were reinforcing service delivery in the universities. And that is the way to go. Triple helix. We can't talk of research and development. It is research that drives the development of any country. We can't talk about that in Nigeria with the current state of our universities. Let government fix our universities. Let government challenge our scholars. Let's give them an enabling environment so that they can deliver on their mandates. And they will do what they do when they leave this country.
All right, Prof, let's investigate, the TET fund thing raised by my colleague a bit further. You have picked funds in that being, funding from government as well. But then again, TET fund in saying yesterday that 1.1 billion had been released to federally owned institutions. But it also raised concern that some of the projects in those institutions are non-performing. I have had, some students say to me that in some federally owned institutions that they don't have lab coats, they don't have tools for science practicals in the university. Give us a sense of how some of these projects are being handled. Who are the contractors? If Asuu is demanding accountability from the federal government, let's have some accountability from Asuu as well.
Well, in the first place, the funds we are talking about are not given to Asuu. They are given to universities. Universities are run or managed by governing councils. Vice chancellors drive the day-to-day activities on campuses as administrators. So, in the first place, Asuu is not to be blamed if there are deficiencies with service delivery or with performance of projects sponsored by TET fund. So Asuu has no blame about that. But let me tell you this. TET fund will have to look inwards into its model of project monitoring and evaluation. We saw this gap. In fact, 2 years ago, we participated, or 3 years ago, we participated in the impact assessment of TET fund project. But we got to a point that we could not go further because some things were not transparent enough. Some things are not transparent enough. So TET fund will have to look in-house. If projects are imposed from Abuja to campuses, if contracts are negotiated with administrators of universities, if the process of monitoring are not open to the end users, then there are gaps that will need to be filled. And those gaps, we have proposed, let me land, please.
Okay.
We have proposed a model that we use in this assessment projects. In this assessment project for every campus, we have budget monitoring committee. We propose that to TET fund, but TET fund is there to embrace it. And what is that model about? The model is about all staff unions, including student union, will be brought together to look at what comes into the university, how we want to allocate the funds to projects, the process of procurement and contract awards. And at the end of the day, everybody will have a say in the project, right from conception to the delivery. And so,
Prof,
we think that's a transparent model, but TET fund is there to embrace it.
Well, I guess we'll have to wait for TET fund to respond to that one. But along the line, the question of whether or not government has been doing one thing or the other has come up. This is what Dr. Chris Ngige had to say about some of the things that had been done by government so far.
There is a renegotiation going on in the Ministry of Education towards the 2009 agreement, which stipulates that you review their condition of service. You review everything, including the revitalization and everything. Let's know where we are. They have done that. In education, I set up the committee. I forced the education to speed it up last year. They finished it. And they said, every side, go back to your principal with this proposal we have, so that your principals will look at it. look at you can call it draft agreement, you can call it proposal, but there are no signatures there. Nothing, nobody signed. So the education side, which is Professor Monzelli committee, Monzelli, because that renegotiation is headed always by a pro-chancellor, who is usually chairman of pro-chancellors. Like now, Benoni Briggs is heading it. They came back and budget and planning, National Salary Incomes and Wages Commission, Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Education, National Universities Commission, 4 of these government agencies were in that committee as advisors or observers. And they pointed out to them and said, this proposal will not fly in government because the government doesn't have the means to start adjusting salaries of university teachers and by 180%. Right.
Minister, you painted
so this is it. Like no. So what is happening now? We are giving them 6 weeks. Okay. We gave Bedoni 6 weeks. I'm waiting for their report from Education. Minister of Education has to transmit it and say this is what we have agreed. Of course, you also transmit to the Presidential Committee on Salaries.
When will 6 weeks end?
The 6 weeks is ending by this Friday.
By this Friday.
Yes. So I'm calling everybody up by next week.
What then happens if status quo remains?
Well, the law says that once we start conciliation, that the Minister of Labour has apprehended. The law says that if it goes to Industrial Arbitration Panel, which is where I'm supposed to refer this matter to, if my conciliation fails, or the National Industrial Court, if the conciliation fails. It's a double barrel thing. I choose the one I want and refer it there. If it fails in my place, I refer. But the law says that once conciliation has started at my level, you call off the strike.
You want to react to this, Prof?
Thank you very much. The almighty Minister of Labour, who decides who to kill and who to keep alive, he has done his worst. I mean, what else can he do apart from stopping, after stopping people's salaries? But the 2 or 3 issues have come out from what he said. You know, I started by saying their strategy is to keep them talking. This renegotiation, I said earlier, started 2017. 2017 to now, how many years? And you think Nigerian scholars cannot see through them? He said they should do a report, bring back to him. He will talk. He will now present the report at one salary review committee that is a member. All those ones are tactics. We have never done it like that. Once you have a government committee, as I explained earlier, we sat, and for 4 full years, we came out with that draft report that he was talking about. If we took that report to government, what we expect government to say is, we disagree on 1, 2, 3 issues. Can we come back and look at them? And that was what we expected to do, not to propose another something that will take to Labour Minister will take to FEC, Labour Minister will take to... When they were reviewing the salaries of people at Central Bank, people at the SEC, and people, in some of these blue chip corporate entities, who were they going to? Were they coming to the Labour Minister? You see, we have been engaging Labour Minister, and we have seen through him that he believes that for 5 years, we are not going to achieve anything. And unfortunately, when we started the negotiation, somebody told us that, well, we should not expect any concrete results because they are talking about 6 weeks now. When that committee was inaugurated in February 2017, the Minister of Education gave that committee, the negotiation committee, 6 weeks. I'm sure 6 weeks from then till now has not yet, we have not yet exhausted 6 weeks. So we don't really take what they are saying seriously again because we know, we have seen through their cavalier attitude, we have seen that they have made up their mind to detract, to degrade, and probably to destroy the academia. However, we owe it a duty. We owe it a duty not to allow that to happen. because of posterity. Like I said earlier, if you want to destroy any country, you attack its education. If you want to degrade the development or remove the basis for the development of any nation, you attack its intelligentsia. And that is what this ruling class is doing. See them now. They are pretending nothing is happening. Everybody is doling out 100 million as if you are doling out 100 naira. And they were running over them, rushing over themselves to obtain presidential nomination forms. Is that the basic problem we have in this country? Is that the ultimate? Is that the most fundamental? Presidency. Presidency to what? Nobody has come out with a clear agenda on how to fix our education. And let me give you one other dimension to this discussion. Because Nigerians need to see through this ruling class. At a time they are reducing budgetary allocation to education, both federal and state governments are proliferating universities. Does that speak well of people that mean well for the country? They don't mind the quality of education they give to the poor people because their children are not here. The Minister of Labor will say, my children schooled here. But that is not enough. What percentage does it represent among the ruling class? So people do things maybe to make some points that will probably push them within the push or increase their political profile.
Another thing stands out from Prof, let me just come in there. One of the things stands out from what the Minister of Labour said. He said 180% is not realistic, and government clearly told Asuu that. What's your reaction to this? And what would be realistic if Asuu were to, concede in the negotiation process?
Well, my sister, please. I'm not in a position to tell you what is realistic, because if we are to go there, we will have to talk about what is the African average, or even what is the West African average. How do other countries treat their scholars? You are talking about 180%. What is the 180%? By what percentage? What is the inflation rate in the country? So if anybody is saying that Asuu is coming with an unrealistic proposal, how does that compete or compare with what they pay people in NCC, with what they pay people in Central Bank, with what they pay people, in some of these, they are blue choice or high-profile corporate entities that are owned by government. You never know the salaries of people working in NIDA. You never know the salaries of people working in Central Bank. You never know the salary, and so many other places. The universities produce those who work in those sectors.
Yeah, just one other issue so that we can... Yeah. What must give for Asuu to return to school?
When you talk of what is acceptable, please, let me make this point. So when you talk of what is acceptable, it has to be arrived at a negotiating table. And that is what they have been dodging.
For which reason,
180%,
which is what this question is about, Prof, because that renegotiation committee has sat according to the minister, and of course Asuu has said that they're not going to be a part of any renegotiation anymore. So what exactly should we expect now? How do we move forward from here? What must give if Asuu is to return to school so that students can go back to school?
Please, Ayo, that is misinformation. Asuu has never said it will not be part of any further negotiation. Asuu has never said that. In fact, we have met the Greece committee and he presented their findings. I was saying earlier that what they did from our own analysis was not correct. They went outside the principles of collective bargaining, which I explained earlier. Government has constituted a team. Government should brief the team. Government should tell the team what they expect. And if any proposal is brought to government, government is free to say, we cannot go this far. This is how we can go. And then we come back to the table. If there's a need for shift, that is collective bargaining. Not going to
just to be clear, Prof.
Who we know?
Yes, just to be clear, Prof. Asuu is still interested in sitting down with government on this matter, yes?
Sure.
Under what circumstance or conditions? Under what conditions would that happen? Because we understand initially that when this renegotiation committee was set up, Asuu was like, look, we're not going to be a part of any renegotiation anymore. So under what condition will Asuu sit with government again?
I think we need to get some things clear. Asuu is saying that there is a proposal before you. Before you call us for any meeting, come up with your own reaction to the proposal. That has not happened. If they say Asuu is proposing what percentage has government come up with? I think that is the issue. Negotiation is about engagement. If a team has just been going around to meet individuals who we know that they have their fixated anti-Asuu sentiments, are we going to allow that to derail us so that for 6 years we achieve nothing? No country does that, and you don't do that with intellectuals.
Well, we have to thank you. There are so many other issues to raise, but Prof, it's always a delight talking to you, and at least the passion is clear and everyone would want students to go back to school. I want to believe that government is as passionate as well. Otherwise, what are we doing here? Professor Abiodun, former president of Asuu, thank you so much for being a part of our conversation this morning.
Thank you for having me. Have a great day.
Yeah, you too. So we're back. This conversation is not over. Take a moment, we'll be right back.
These students, chanting solidarity songs at the entrance of Channel's television headquarters, are from the Obafemi Awolowo University, Ile-Ife. Following the latest announcement by Asuu to extend its ongoing strike, they are calling on the federal government to urgently address the incessant closure of schools.
We have plans. We are the future of this country. We shouldn't be treated this way. And can they do this to their children? Because they are not in this country. We are suffering from the devastation that they've committed and everything that is going backward in this country. So we are the receiving end.
They warn that failure of the federal government to address these issues raised by Asuu will lead to mass protests across the country.
We cannot continue like this, and that's why we've deemed it fit to come out to register our grievances against the federal government. And this is serving as a warning to them that if, as a matter of fact, they cannot attend to the Asuu strike, we are going to come out in mass and we shut down every political activities in the country because we are tired.
The same message is coming from the University of Lagos. Here, the Asuu chairman of the institution's chapter says 3 months of staying at home is already a major setback, and this extension will only make things worse for their education.
I really feel sad because these issues have remained the same in the last 13 years.
In Edo State, students are also protesting against the ongoing Asuu strike, barricading a section of the road near Benin Airport. They also took their demands to the State Secretariat of the Nigeria Union of Journalists Press Center, where the state chairman of the union echoed their appeal for a resolution to be reached so that the students can return to school.
We have the opinion very strongly that the federal government of Nigeria and the academic staff union of universities in Nigeria should immediately return back to the negotiation table. Yes! And resolve the impasse. We want our young ones to return to the classroom. Yes!
The students maintain that no education means no election, a threat they expect the federal government to take as seriously as the situation they say has become unbearable.
indeed, when you see those students, you can't but identify with them, you know, sharing their pain. 3 months of being at home is not fun at all, and not all of them have been able to find positive engagement at this critical time. And perhaps that's the reason that the National Association of Nigerian Students has said that the federal government effort is dissatisfactory, that it is a total war. So tempers are high, not just with Asuu, but also with the National Association of Nigerian Students. And this is where we're headed as we welcome Comrade Victor Ezenagu, the National Public Relations Officer, National Association of Nigerian Students, who's joining us from our Abuja studio. Welcome, Comrade Ezenagu.
Good morning.
Yes, indeed. Good morning to you. And Nans is saying that it's declaring national action in response to this extension of the strike. Tell us what this, or how this national action will be implemented.
Okay, thank you so much. We are poised at ensuring that our campuses are reopened. As such, the ultimatum and instruction has gone out to all the 36 states and FCT, calling on all our structures to begin immediately, starting from today, by barricading and blocking every federal road, every road leading to the airport, and ensuring they remain on the street at least 3 hours every day until the federal government does something as regards to settling their impasse with Asuu for us to return back to our campuses. And we shall also continue in our meeting that is coming up this weekend. We'll be having a convention/Senate meeting where we are going to take a final decision on how to storm and ensure, like we're not joking by the statement that we've given out, telling the government and the ruling class, the political class in Nigeria, that there shall be no primaries, there shall be no political activities if our future is not resolved, if our future is not decided well, if the issue concerning the Nigerian students is not resolved. Because we can't be talking about next election. We should be talking about next generation. If we're only concerned about elections, then what happens to the next generation? Education is the only thing that can ensure and ascertain the next generation or existence of Nigeria and making Nigeria a better place. As such, we cannot sit back and watch our fathers who are almost in their dying age to sit and toy with our future. We will not allow that. There shall be no primary, there shall be no political activities in Nigeria except the Asuu strike is resolved.
Are you concerned, comrade, is your association, the executive, the leadership of Nans, concerned about the possibility of this issue being, should I use the word hijacked? Because, I mean, historically, when students raise their voices against an issue, you know, expressing their displeasure, over the years, it usually doesn't end the way even the students themselves want it to end. So is there a way of protecting this campaign to ensure that it doesn't get out of hand? Has Nans in any way informed or involved the police or any security apparatus to ensure protection of lives and property?
We will always write officially to the security agencies to inform them about our mass action. Either we write officially or we'll do a broadcast the way we're doing now to inform them that we're going for a mass action. Moreover, I think if our country, our government is concerned about the mass action not being hijacked, I think what they should do is to be responsive by living up to the expectation. We've been very calm all this while. We've obeyed our 3C mantra: consultation, consolidation, before confrontation. And even in the confrontation, we've been very peaceful. Our last mass action
was peaceful, well coordinated, because we are leadership. The current leadership of Nans, heavily led by Comrade Sunday Adedayo Achefon, the Nans president, and the Senate president, Comrade Shuksa Okafor. We've been able to manage both the executive and the Senate arm very well in ensuring peace in all we do. But if the government decide to look otherwise, you see, it will get a time when you tell the students, follow this way, and it might happen otherwise. Then it's the fault of the government. It becomes the fault of the government. But from our own side, as leadership, we'll ensure we put in place maximum control for peace, for the protests to be peaceful. Thank you.
Comrade, your Operation Test Run protests also seeks to stop all political activities from taking place. Well, I wonder how that will happen, because whilst your constitutional right to assemble and protest is granted, the politicians also have a right to proceed with their activities. Isn't this a bit of a call to disorder? I don't want to say that it's courting anarchy.
You see, everyone will have a view, their own view as regards to this. But the truth is that if your house is on fire, you don't go hunting. Anybody whose house is on fire does not go to hunt games. We can't be talking about our future and politicians are gathering. What are they gathering for? What is politics all about? Politics is all about ensuring the welfare and well-being of the people, of the citizens. So we can't be talking about, we can't be at home and people are gathering. Then who are they gathering for? What are they gathering to do? To come and take power? To come and rule over us? No, now. We can't accept that. So the thing is, first thing first, we must resolve issue of Asuu for us to go back to campuses. Else, there is no need for any political gathering. No. Politics is not their private business. Politics is all about Nigeria, and it's all about it's our collective business. So we cannot allow that to stand. Thank you.
Speaking of resolution, do you think that the approach of Asuu to doing things should also change? What do you think Asuu should do differently?
You see, I am not to talk for Asuu. I cannot be talking about what Asuu should do. All I know is, all I can say from our leadership is that, what we can say is that both federal government and Asuu, the striking union, should understand that when it comes to negotiation, there is need for both parties to shift ground for there to be a positive resolution. So that is what we're asking both of them. But the federal government and Asuu should shift their grounds so that there will be a way forward, a positive way forward as regards to their impasse.
There are a couple of other bodies that may not have been significantly factored into this conversation, comrade. One of them is the management of the universities, and then the states, the state governments, where they have state universities. But let's begin with the university management. Is Nans, are students satisfied with the way the students, the management of the universities have managed their affairs over time? Because there are those who wonder maybe if the management of the universities have been up and about doing what is expected of them, maybe, you know, they would have been able to address this, you know, situation. It wouldn't get as bad, because ultimately it's about the students, isn't it? So is Nans satisfied with the way the university management manages their affairs in the light of all the issues that Asuu is raising?
We cannot say we're satisfied, because if we're saying we're satisfied, then there shouldn't be issues. So for the fact there are issues, there is no satisfaction. I think I would only say that the management of universities should also improve in the ways of managing the affairs of the university, so that issues will not come up. Issues like this will not come up. That's all I can say on that.
Are you saying that the management of the universities are in any way complicit in the issues that Asuu is raising? Are you saying that
if all parties are doing well, there won't be issues. Okay. If all parties are doing well, both management of universities, who are by extension the government, if all are doing well, then there won't be issues.
Okay. How about the state-managed universities?
It means for there to be issues, it means all is not well.
How about these universities that are owned by the state? There are some of them that say, you know, the responsibilities that they have, they are directly that affect the states. And it would seem like no one is talking to the state governments who own these universities. Is there anything that you think the states could have done or can do themselves so that at least state-owned universities can return to school?
In that regard, I think I will say that the state governments should also step up their game by increasing their subventions to the state-owned universities, and then perhaps a possible review of the staff's welfare and the state-owned institutions, so that they can return to campuses.
Just 1 second. Do you think that it would help if state governments who have universities sat down with the Federal Ministry of Education in order to resolve the issues together, because at least they are both university owners?
It will assist. It will assist, definitely. It will assist. All we want is a solution, a possible solution that will return our students back to their classes, or a solution that will end this whole Asuu thing that has always been there. In fact, before some of us started our secondary education, there was Asuu strike and Asuu impasse with the government. So all we need is any party or any organization that will come on board that will help to resolve it and then bring a lasting solution. That's all we're interested in.
Now, Comrade, just before we let you go, I'd like to process your Operation Test Run protests against the backdrop of the outlook to Nans. It was expressed at the start of the program that Nans is not as formidable as it was in the past, when former presidents, generals at the time, you know, lived in fear of Asuu. What do you say to the view that, in fear of Nans rather, what do you say to the view that Nans is not as formidable as it used to be, is not as forceful, and would perhaps not be able to achieve much with its Operation Test Run protest?
Well, you see, Nans is formidable. In the past, we had less students from Nigerian origin going to school abroad. In the past, we have less parents who send their kids abroad. Most of the sabotage we get now are from the ruling class, because their children are not here. Those ones that their children are here, when we call for a mass action, they use them to sabotage. Some of them will use their relatives who are part of us to do divide and rule. But yet, we're not deterred. They have all arsenal at their comfort to do a divide and rule on us, but we're not deterred. We are formidable. We are coming to shock Nigeria. We're coming to shock Nigerians. We're coming to shock the government. We're coming to shock everybody if this issue is not resolved. You see, I wouldn't want to say much, but let's see it play out. Let's see it play out. When it plays out, people will blame themselves. People will say, if we had known, we would have resolved this earlier. Let's see it play out. That's all I can say now.
Indeed, you're coming to shock Nigerians, and we hope that to be eventually pleasantly surprised, and we hope that the process is not hijacked and doesn't turn violent in the interest of peace. Comrade Victor Ezenagu, National Public Relations Officer, National Association of Nigerian Students, thank you for joining us on Sunrise this morning.
Thank you.
All right, we'll take a break now. When we return, it will be time to talk politics and some things coming in from the courts. Stay with Sunrise Daily.
Lawyers and members of the public are here in this courtroom for the hearing of a suit filed by the Central Bank Governor, Mr. Godwin Emefiele, challenging his right to contest the position of Nigeria's president in the 2023 election. Arguing an ex parte motion filed because of the urgency of the matter, counsel to the CBN Governor, Michael Zekome, says his client, who is the current CBN Governor, is interested in running for the office of the President of the country, but is in a dilemma on account of if he can run without resigning as the Governor of the Apex Bank. Mr. Ozekome argues that Section 82, subsection 12 of the Electoral Act has been voided by a federal high court in Umuahia and that the matter is on appeal at the moment. He also praised the court for an order of interim injunction stopping further action on the matter.
Our argument in this court is that even that Section 84, subsection 12, even if it was not struck down, or even if the judgment of Justice Anyadike is not affirmed by the Court of Appeal, it does not apply to Emefiele as governor of Central Bank. Who is he? He's a public officer. What provisions govern public officers? Section 318 of the Constitution defines who a public officer is. A statutory corporation that is government owned, like the CBN. It's a public office. So a person occupying it is a public officer. Can he therefore be subjected to Section 84, subsection 12 of the Electoral Act, which names political appointees as ineligible to contest? We are saying he's not a political appointee.
The CBN governor had taken the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, and the Attorney General of the Federation before a federal high court in Abuja, seeking enforcement of his right to contest the 2023 presidential election without resigning from his current position.
Hitherto, when we talk about the 2023 elections, when we look at the Constitution as amended of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and the Electoral Act, the 2022 version, we see now that there are other laws and legal paraphernalia that will be coming to play depending on who is vying for office. That and a number of other issues we will raise with Mr. Ayobolu Adegboruwa, Senior Advocate of Nigeria and Human Rights Lawyer this morning. Thanks for joining us this morning. You put out that statement and said that this is a joke. It's a 100 million naira joke. And don't you think it's too expensive?
Thank you very much, Ayo. Good morning, Nigeria. I seek your kind permission to just grant me leave to restate the need for the federal government of Nigeria to resolve the Asuu strike. You see, students are potent, students are vibrant, and they're the leaders of Nigeria. It's important that the mass action being declared by Nans should be supported by the people of Nigeria. And, you know, answering your question about whether it will be hijacked by hoodlums, the hoodlums are the creations of society. They are the creation of government that refuses to take care of them. The hoodlums are in Abuja. They are always there to invade primaries and meetings of politicians, but because policemen are deployed. So I'm putting the Inspector General of Police on alert to ensure that he provides adequate security for the students in all their locations so that their mass protests will be peaceful, will not be hijacked. It is the responsibility of the police under the Police Act to offer them protection. And we think that that is important, that it should be resolved in that manner. So I'm sorry, I just thought that I should raise that because it's important to the future of Nigeria, you know. Now, talking about the governor of Central Bank, Mr. Godwin Emefiele, honestly, it's a comedy. We thought that it was something like a joke. We thought it was just something that will remain in the rumor mills because, you know, it's something that has been on for some time. When we saw vehicles that were branded with his posters and photographs, and of course there was a serious denial. But if you trace the history of the governor of Central Bank, you will see that it will be clear that the handwriting had been so much on the wall that he was all the while a politician, and indeed a partisan politician. You will recall, Ayo, that in the course of the NSAS protests, the Central Bank governor organized a secret meeting with the leaders of the protesters to try to convince them to shelve the protests. And when they refused to do that, he went ahead to block their accounts. If you recall, the leaders of the NSAS protest, their accounts were blocked by the Central Bank. And when there was outrage, he actually went to court to secure an ex parte order to block their accounts until Mr. Femi Falana SAN, another lawyer, had to rise to the occasion to put an end to that device. So all the while, the governor of Central Bank had given us the impression that he's not entitled to remain in that office. And I say this with all due respect to him, because, you know, Nigerians have trusted so much in the person of the governor. You know, he's the #1 banker in Nigeria. He's the chairman of the Bankers Committee. He's the chairman of the financial regulation entities in Nigeria that determines the rate of inflation, that determines the exchange rate. The governor of the Central Bank is such in a position of fiduciary relationship to so many people. And it's not correct for such a person to openly indicate partisan interests. Can you imagine, for instance, Ayo, that the governor of Central Bank is a member of All Progressive Congress, and he has power to remove managing directors of all banks. He has power to dissolve the executive of all banks. He has power to appoint any other person in their place, as he did with Central Bank recently. So you imagine, for instance, if Mr. Emefiele is a member of APC and the governor of another bank is a member of PDP, and he's going to abuse his position or use his position to punish him, to witch hunt him. So that is the reason why he is not in a position to pursue partisan politics. For instance, Mr. Emefiele is the lender to all other banks. He is in custody of the foreign exchange. He's in custody of our international accounts. How can such a person submit himself to politicians? Well, how can such a person submit himself to APC?
Well, Mr. Degorua, there are those who would make it clear that as far as the laws are concerned, he hasn't done anything wrong, or has he?
Oh yes, he has done a lot wrong. Because you shouldn't judge the position of Mr. Emefiele with the Constitution alone. There are laws regulating his office specifically. So those laws should be rated above and primarily in relation to his employment. Number one is that the CBN Act is the one that governs the activities of the Central Bank governor. Section 1 of the CBN Act says that that office should be autonomous. It should be dependent. The Central Bank of Nigeria, for God's sake, is like INEC. It should not be under the control of politicians. It should not be under the control of the presidency. It should not be under the control of APC or PDP or APGA. Section 6 of the CBN Act says the governor of Central Bank should not pursue any interest that will make him to be in conflict with his official duties. How can the governor of Central Bank go and indicate interest to pick up nomination form in a political party and he still wants to remain in office? There's conflict of interest. For instance, Ayo, since yesterday, when this matter became known to the public, it has caused a lot of commotion in INEC because the Central Bank is warehousing sensitive materials for INEC, unknown to the INEC that the head of that agency is a member of APC. How can the governor of Central Bank, who wants to be a presidential candidate of a political party, be in charge of electoral materials, in charge of ballot box, in charge of card reader?
Well, Mr. Adegorua, there are those who would also wonder, hey, is the case in court enough proof that the CBN governor has declared interest in the presidential elections? Because he just recently said, look, I'm still consulting with all the higher powers and all of that. So there hasn't been that outright, affirmation that yes. And that's also what INEC put out. You must have seen the statement from INEC saying, well, to the best of our knowledge, that isn't the case yet. But when that time, if and when that time comes, then the needful shall be done.
Yeah, thank you, Ayo. It is scandalous enough, as far as Nigerians are concerned, that there is a confirmation from the world in Delta State that Mr. Godwin Emefiele is indeed a card-carrying member of the All Progressive Congress. That is enough conflict. Whether he indicates his interest specifically to pick nomination form, since the news broke out, he has not denied that he's a card-carrying member of a political party. That is enough for him to leave office. That is enough for him to vacate office. The case that he has filed at the Federal High Court, with all due respect, is mainly meant to pull the wool over Nigerians. Because what Mr. Godwin Emefiele is doing with the case in the Federal High Court is to seek to secure his position in office. He's asking the court to order that status quo be maintained. In other words, he doesn't want to be sacked because he knew that Nigerians were going to be outraged, which is stepping into the murky waters of politics, whilst pretending to be regulating our financial sector. That's why he filed that case. It's not for interpretation of Section 82, Section 82 at all. What he's doing strategically is to use that case to tie the hands of the president and the Senate from asking him to leave office. And he should do that in the National Industrial Court. If he wants to protect his position in office, he should go there to determine his status, not the Federal High Court. So the case that he filed at the Federal High Court has nothing to do with his eligibility. He's indirectly using it with style to tie the hands of Nigerians from asking him to leave office. And that's why we are demanding, for instance, that political parties, INEC, National Assembly, civil society organizations, SERAP, Nigerian Bar Association, everybody should go and join that case and kill it. Because this is a bad example to other public officers. Because if we say, for instance, the governor of Central Bank should sit in office and still pick a nomination form for a political party, that should extend to INEC chairman. The chairman of INEC should also go and pick the form of PDP because he's a public officer. The Chief Justice of Nigeria should go and pick the nomination form of ABGA because he's also a public officer. For God's sake, Mr. Emefiele is occupying a sensitive position. And by Section 1 of the public...
Oh, Mr. Adegorua, he's tickling our imagination even as he's provoking food for thought. We hope to get him back as soon as possible because it will now be time to begin to look at the legal gymnastics to specifically ask, based on what Mr. Emefiele's lawyers are saying that Section 84 subsection 12 does not apply to him because he's not a political appointee, specifically that he's a public servant. So in the light of that, is it that the law has typically not anticipated this particular situation, or the law or his lawyers are right in their argument, so to speak?
Well, there are those who, I also glanced at the front page of, one of the dailies yesterday, saying that, there's an uproar in among finance experts and lawyers concerning that information that is, should I say, leaking or smoking out right now. So one can only wait and just, wonder how this is all going to play out. Well, we'll wait for Mr. Adegorua to speak to it because, you know, he is a senior advocate of Nigeria. Mr. Ozekome, Chief Ozekome, who spoke with us earlier, you know, on screen, talking about the Constitution, the Electoral Act, also has his own case. So ultimately, it looks like it's going to be a case between lawyers and
lawyers
and
more lawyers.
But where
because when you look at that, you'll also have to look at the Attorney General of the Federation, who had said, based on the ruling from Abia State, the deletion of that aspect of the law is in progress. So we're waiting for that to be deleted from the Electoral Act. Mr. Ebonlu Adegboruwa is back, and I hope you heard us while we were, you know, exchanging ideas, thoughts on the legal gymnastics of Mr. Emefiele's petition to the court. I want you to speak to the position of Emefiele's lawyers, who say that Section 84, subsection 12, does not apply to him.
Thank you very much. When you want to interpret the law, it must be interpreted holistically. And Section 84, sub 12 of the Constitution, of the Electoral Act, rather, I'm sorry, was meant to avoid a position whereby somebody who has an interest in elective office and yet occupies public office does not put himself in position of conflict. Let me agree with the counsel to Mr. Godwin Emefiele that indeed he's a public officer. Paragraph 1 of the Code of Conduct guiding the activities of public officers says that no public officer should put himself in any position where there will be conflict between his official duties and his personal interests. And you can see the kind of crisis that Mr. Emefiele has thrown the Nigerian economy into. Since the period he indicated this interest in partisan politics, the Naira has plummeted. The exchange rate yesterday is 591 Naira to $1, whereas it was 417 Naira before. So it is creating a lot of crisis in the economy. Mr. Emefiele is not an ordinary public officer. He's the #1 banker in Nigeria, like I've told you. So he's guided by not just the Electoral Act, not just the Constitution, he's guided by the Banks and Other Financial Activities Financial Activities Act, he's guided by the Central Bank of Nigeria Act, and he cannot, while holding office as the #1 banker of Nigeria, pick a nomination form of a political party. It's a joke, and we can't allow it.
I want to follow up on that by asking, at what point does INEC come in here? Because we're not really sure if he's contesting or not. As my colleague said, you know, only days ago he said he's still consulting with God. And he is the one that headed to court, asking the court to restrain INEC from stopping him from pursuing his presidential ambition. So at what point did INEC, in the very recent past, stop him from pursuing his ambition? Please give us some legal clarity on that.
In fact, you yourself have given a clarity on that. Because in law, there must be a course of action. There must be something that the defendants have done which will activate the case you are filing in court. As we speak this morning, there is no action on the part of INEC. There is no action on the part of the Attorney General of the Federation indicating their decision or desire to prevent Mr. Emefiele from contesting office. So which shows clearly that the case he has filed in court discloses no reasonable course of action. The matter is premature, it is frivolous. And I'm glad that the judge handling the case has seen through it. That's why he declined to make any order. And I'm sure he will not make any order to cause crisis in the economy of Nigeria, to ask somebody who is regulating our financial sector to at the same time go and bow to to Senator Adamu as chairman of INEC, to go and bow to Senator Yola Missouri as secretary of APC. That shouldn't happen. So as we are today, this morning, there is no cause of action for Mr. Emefiele. As indeed, before the court, he has not even declared his intention to contest office. So there is no reason for him to be in court at all. But like I told you earlier, the game plan of Mr. Godwin Emefiele is to use this case to tie the hands of the president and the National Assembly from sacking him, so that he will continue to remain in office and he will continue to contend that there is a case pending in court. That's why he was asking the court to ask that the status quo be maintained. That status quo is to ask him to sit in office while he goes ahead to be meeting with politicians. And that shouldn't work.
Just a quick one on this one before we go to one or two other matters. So the court has invited INEC and the AGF to make some declarations, at least to, I mean, you saw the judgment and all of that. So one is wondering, what do you make of that position of the court as at this moment? And what would you be, can you hazard a guess as to what the AGF's office or the INEC might be presenting to the court?
Yes, I can hazard a guess, Ayo. By the extant practice of our law as we stand in Nigeria today, the Supreme Court has given decisions asking INEC to remain neutral in political matters. So I can tell you for sure, as I speak to you this morning, that INEC will not file any paper in that court case. That is the reason why Mr. Godwin Emefiele deliberately sued INEC, knowing the position of the law that the Supreme Court has asked INEC to remain neutral in electoral matters. And then you can also predict the position of the Honorable Attorney General. The Honorable Attorney General is in support of the cancellation of Section 8412. So the Honorable Attorney General is going to support Mr. Emefiele, the matter in Federal High Court, where this same Section 8412 was nullified. The Attorney General in that case supported the plaintiff and was even rejoicing. The office of the Attorney General was rejoicing for a judgment that was against it. So you can predict where the Attorney General will go. And indeed, you know that the Attorney General has already also declared to contest office as governor of Kebbi State. So the Attorney General will probably also support the position of Mr. Godwin Emefiele for him to also remain in office while he also picks the nomination form of governorship for Kebbi State. So I think what is important, that's why I'm asking that other persons and parties should go into the case. If you want to pick the nomination form of APC, APC itself should be a party to the case.
Okay, well,
National Assembly should be a party to the case. Let everybody go and join that case.
Yeah, well, you maybe I could just quickly correct something that you said the other time. I think you meant to say Senator Adamu is chairman of APC and not INEC, as you came on the other time. But don't you think, because I mean, INEC has over time, any time that we're in the build-up to an election, there are always cases into which INEC is joined. Don't you think that these legal battles that INEC has to contend with are sufficient distractions for the electoral umpire? I think we have... Can you hear me?
Thank you. Yes, I can hear you. You are talking about whether the cases that INEC is being confronted with would create some kind of distraction for that agency in the execution of... Yes, Ayo, we're in a democratic society. If you go through the budget of INEC year in, year out, a lot of money is dedicated for litigation. And the reason is because every time we have a new electoral act, there has to be interpretation. There has to be some form of clarification by the judiciary, which is entitled under the Constitution to be the one to give such interpretation. So we should not be scared of cases. The only thing for us is that those cases should be determined timeously. I don't see the reason why the case of Section 8412 should still be pending in court by now, because it's affecting a lot of things. It's creating a lot of instability. It's creating a lot of tension. The Court of Appeal should have determined that case from day to day and immediately get to the Supreme Court and that section be resolved permanently. Otherwise, Emefiele will not be doing this kind of comedy that he is up to presently if the matter had been determined one way or the other. So we shouldn't be worried that there are cases pending against INEC. INEC has enough materials. It's been well funded to have enough personnel. It has a legal department manned by capable senior advocates whom I have worked with in a number of cases. And so they have a robust legal department that will handle those matters. So it shouldn't be an excuse for INEC, for instance, to continue to conduct inconclusive elections or be claiming that the cases in court is a distraction. It cannot affect the activities of INEC because enough fund has been budgeted to take care of those cases. And there are enough lawyers in Nigeria for INEC to be able to hire so that it will not distract itself from the main responsibility of organizing elections.
Let's look a bit more at Section 84, subsection 12. There are other political appointees now who are contesting and apparently running foul of that section of the new Electoral Act. Are they at rest because of the ruling of the Abia State High Court? And while it has not been deleted, what is the implication of their for their continued pursuit of their presidential aspiration?
They are all working on landmines. They are working on legal landmines. Political parties fielding public officers as candidates are taking a huge risk. And they should not do that. Because you know what happened in Zamfara State, you know what happened in River State. Once a matter is pending in court, it should be sufficient notice to anybody not to take any risk. So those who are jostling for public office through elections and yet are holding appointing offices are only risking their positions, and they are putting their political parties at risk. So I would not advise any political party, for instance, to field any public officer who is still in office and has not resigned and yet wants to also contest an election. Because the purpose is so clear. If, for instance, you are a central bank governor and we are paying you so much, you have a private jet, you have all manner of things at your beck and call, and you are not satisfied with that office. You are not satisfied, you are not contented with the office we have given you, where you have spent 5 years, and another 5 years was renewed for you, and you are not happy with that, you are not contented. You cannot, while remaining there, then be seeking elective office. That's the purpose. It is rational, it is logical, it is moral, that whoever is not satisfied with office that is occupying and wants to go for election should leave that office. Otherwise, if you are satisfied, why won't you remain in the place and discharge your responsibilities effectively? But once you are not contented, once there is greed in your eye, once you are politically so avaricious to go to the politicians, you should vacate your office. You should vacate your office.
It's a bit more expansive than that, because by that aspect of the Electoral Act, local government chairmen, governors and their deputies, National Assembly members are voting delegates. And very soon, we'll see a very practically empty National Assembly where they return to their states to begin to campaign and contest for election. So what's going to happen? Are we going to see mass resignations in view of Section 84, subsection 12, or are we going to see a mass flouting of that aspect of the law?
Thank you so very much. Nigeria has close to 200 million people. Those who are already occupying public office, they are already discharging their functions and serving Nigeria in one capacity. They should give others a chance. You can't hold us to ransom. We recycle the same people up and down every day. I think with all due respect, those who have already served Nigeria in one capacity or the other should be satisfied with the opportunities that we are giving them. They should allow other people. We don't need to panic over Section 84.12. They should allow other people.
It sounds like, Mr. Ebolu Adegora, you are campaigning for turn by turn. But no, I understand.
I just look at the Nans PRO.
Yeah. Yeah, I just wanted to chip that in. Well, we have to thank you very much this morning. We know you have quite a loaded day. Ebolu Adegora is Senior Advocate of Nigeria. Thank you so much for your perspectives this morning. And thank you for the love of country.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Yeah. A few messages from you as we wrap up the show this morning. Ako Omodu begins this section, says, Section 9 of the CBN Act forbids the CBN governor from engaging in any other kind of employment, vocation, while in office. The CBN governor should know that this is different from Section 84, sub 12 of the Electoral Act.
And Ola Abdul Fattah says, I want to plead with FG and Varsity's lecturers to reach an agreement urgently and save the tertiary institution. This is the only learning institution where sons of rich and indigent meet as well as learn under one roof.
Augustus says, on presidential forms, Is it not ironic? The region that was said to have had most vulnerable, the poorest of the poor in this nation, are gathering in the name of groups to buy 100 million naira nomination form for people that are made already.
And Dixon Eka is also talking about presidential forms. He says, the rate at which people are purchasing the 100 million naira APC nomination form without regards to the cost of the form showed that the Nigerian Commonwealth is not common, but restricted to a few at the top.
So much to add to that one, but we just have to say thank you this morning for being a part of our program and hope that we have been able to titillate your day today. Have a wonderful rest of it. I'm Ayo Makinde.
I am Bukola Samuel Webimo. Thank you for being a part of our day today and enjoy the rest of your day.